The mirror never lies, but it never tells the whole truth. Anonymous.
Every human being lives inside a mirror. We polish it daily through words, choices, and tiny performances, hoping that what we see reflected back will confirm who we believe we are. We call it confidence, ambition, self-expression. But beneath all the polish is the same raw impulse. I need to be seen. No one escapes it. The artist who swears he creates only for truth, the skeptic who prides herself on not caring what others think, the spiritual man who preaches detachment. They all glance secretly at their own reflection, hoping it loves them back. That is the quiet hunger Robert Greene calls narcissism, the endless negotiation between the image we project and the emptiness that waits behind it. We learn this hunger early. A child's first power is attention. When someone looks, the world exists. When no one does, it fades. Every cry, every laugh, every little triumph is a signal. Do you see me? That question never dies. It just grows sophisticated. We build careers, relationships, reputations, all elaborate ways of asking it again. The tragedy is that the mirror cannot feed us. The more we depend on reflection, the more fragile we become. Each compliment feels like oxygen, each criticism like suffocation. To protect the image, we polish harder, defend, exaggerate, withdraw. Pride becomes armor, irony becomes disguise, and slowly the real self, messy and uncertain, is exiled. We mistake attention for connection, performance for love. Look around today, and the mirror has multiplied. Everyone carries a portable stage, broadcasting fragments of themselves into a sea of other mirrors. We scroll through curated selves and measure our worth against illusions. The technology is new. The psychology is ancient. Rome had marble statues. We have screens. Same impulse, faster reflection. But this law is not about condemning vanity. It's about recognizing scale. There's a healthy form of self-love, the kind that steadies you. It's the quiet pride of competence, the satisfaction of purpose, the grace of knowing your own limits. Then there is the hunger that devours itself, the narcissism born from emptiness rather than fullness. You can feel the difference. One expands the heart, the other tightens it. The first step toward understanding narcissism is admitting its presence in ourselves. It hides under noble disguises, the need to help, to teach, to lead, even to rebel. When we are honest, we discover that much of what we call principle is sometimes performance, another way of saying, look at me, but believe it's about something else. That honesty stings. It strips away the comfort of superiority. But only through it can empathy be born. Because once you see your own hunger for recognition, you start to recognize everyone else's. The arrogance of judging gives way to the curiosity of understanding. You begin to notice how people defend their fragile images, how easily they are wounded, how the smallest slight can open an abyss. And in that moment, compassion becomes strategy. You stop taking behavior personally. You start reading it as symptom. Empathy, then, is not softness. It is perception. It allows you to move among people without triggering their vanity or feeding your own. The truly empathetic person is not the one who agrees with everyone, but the one who sees through everyone, including themselves, without contempt. To master this law, we must look directly into the mirror and keep looking until it cracks, until the reflection loses its glamour and reveals what lies behind it, the simple, frightened need to matter. If you can meet that need with awareness instead of denial, it quiets. When it quiets, something new appears, a clear surface through which you can finally see others. That is the beginning of freedom from narcissism, not to erase the self, but to understand it so completely that it stops begging for proof. The mirror remains, but the void behind it no longer controls you. Narcissism does not announce itself. It rarely walks into the room declaring, "I am self-absorbed." It enters quietly, wearing the costumes of normal behavior. It can look like confidence, ambition, generosity, even humility. Only when you trace the thread backward do you notice that the motive is the same: the need to be reflected, to exist in the eyes of others. Watch yourself for a week. Every time you speak, post, correct, compliment, or argue, ask, "Who am I talking to?" Often the audience is imaginary. We perform conversations in our minds long before the real one begins. The approval we seek may not even belong to the person in front of us. It belongs to someone from long ago, whose gaze we still chase. The world becomes a hall of mirrors where every gesture seeks confirmation. In its mild form, this is harmless. We all want to be noticed. Attention oils the machinery of cooperation. But when that desire becomes the engine rather than the lubricant, it distorts everything. The narcissist cannot listen. He only waits for his turn to speak. He cannot love. He can only admire reflections of himself in others. He does not pursue goals for their own sake, but for the applause they promise. Without a mirror, he evaporates. You can see this pattern in power, art, and ordinary life. The leader who demands loyalty above truth, the artist who cannot survive criticism, the friend who turns every story toward herself. They are all orbiting the same black hole. What they call passion is often hunger. What they call conviction is sometimes fear. Their energy is dazzling, but it feeds on attention the way fire feeds on air. Remove the oxygen and they flicker out. Social media amplifies the condition until it becomes culture. We live in a marketplace of mirrors. Every like, every comment, every follower becomes a tiny dose of reflected existence. The modern self is constantly auditioning for reality. The danger is not that we become narcissists. It is that we stop noticing we already are. The performance becomes so seamless that we forget it started as one. In quieter forms, narcissism hides behind virtue. The rescuer who cannot rest until everyone is grateful, the mentor who needs to be indispensable, the rebel who defines himself only by opposition. Each is feeding on the same substance. What looks like devotion can be dependency on admiration. This is why good intentions often end in resentment. They were never purely about others. At its core, narcissism is a confusion between love and recognition. Real love sees. Narcissistic love seeks to be seen. One expands the world. The other turns it into a mirror. When we say someone takes all the air out of the room, what we mean is that their need to be noticed has replaced our need to breathe. But we must resist the comfort of condemnation. It is easy to label others narcissists and feel superior. It is harder to admit how often we move by the same instinct. The line between healthy self-regard and vanity is thin because both grow from the same root, the awareness of being separate. The more uncertain we feel inside, the more desperately we try to prove that we exist. Understanding this changes the way you see people. The boast becomes a confession of doubt. The arrogance reveals pain. Even cruelty often hides fear of invisibility. You begin to notice how fragile the human sense of self is, how a single ignored message, a small failure, a loss of status can trigger the ancient panic of not being seen. You realize how much of civilization is built on the need to avoid that panic. To see this clearly is not to despise humanity. It is to recognize its design. The mirror is part of us. The goal is not to smash it, but to learn when we are looking into it and when we are looking through it. That awareness turns narcissism from blindness into insight. The moment you can catch yourself performing, you are already a little freer. Most of what we call relationship is an exchange of mirrors. Two people meet and, for a while, each reflects the other's best image. It feels like love, but in truth, it is recognition, the narcotic of being seen. The early glow of romance, the spark of friendship, even the mentor's pride in a student, all of it rests on this delicate agreement. You confirm who I think I am, and I will do the same for you. When that agreement breaks, affection often vanishes. One careless comment, one perceived slight, and the reflection turns cloudy. The partner who once adored your strength now calls it control. The friend who admired your passion now calls it obsession. In those moments, the relationship reveals its hidden foundation, not understanding, but mutual ego maintenance. When the mirrors crack, both parties scramble to rebuild their image. That is why breakups and betrayals feel not only painful, but annihilating. They do not merely wound love, they shatter identity. This same pattern scales up into the social world. Groups, movements, and nations are also mirrors. Each collective identity is built around a shared reflection, a story of who we are, and more importantly, who they are not. The glue of belonging is emotional flattery. We are the righteous, the wise, the chosen. It feels safe because it tells us that our reflection is stable. But stability built on constant comparison is fragile. The more a group insists on its purity, the more it reveals its insecurity. You can watch this dynamic in politics, religion, and art. The charismatic leader thrives by offering his followers an enlarged reflection of themselves. He speaks their secret vanity aloud. You are special, misunderstood, superior. His authority depends entirely on sustaining that illusion. If he ever forced them to confront their ordinary humanness, they would turn on him, for he would have broken the mirror. So he must keep feeding it, louder each time, until admiration becomes worship, and worship turns into hysteria. That is not leadership. It is mutual dependency disguised as vision. The same machinery drives social media. What began as communication has become a marketplace of validation. We measure worth in reactions, mistaking quantifiable attention for connection. The algorithm rewards outrage because outrage demands response, and response means visibility. We are pulled into cycles of performance, each gesture calculated to maintain reflection. Even those who reject the system often do so publicly, performing authenticity for the same invisible crowd. It would be comforting to think that narcissism belongs only to the vain and the famous. But ordinary life runs on subtler versions. Parents who live through their children, couples who perform happiness, professionals who trade exhaustion for admiration. Each is a variation on the same theme. Our culture confuses exposure with existence, and so we expose ourselves endlessly, terrified of disappearing. The irony is that narcissism, born from the need to connect, ends in isolation. When every interaction is a negotiation for validation, no one truly sees anyone. Conversations become parallel monologues. Empathy shrivels because attention is a finite resource and each of us is hoarding it. we wonder why loneliness increases in a world more connected than ever. It is because connection without humility is performance. We are surrounded by reflections and starving for recognition. Yet within this grim pattern lies a strange hope. Once you understand how the mirror operates, you can use it differently. You can turn attention into a tool rather than a drug. You can practice what Greene calls strategic empathy, learning to read the emotional economy of others, not to exploit it, but to navigate it with care. When you recognize that everyone is guarding a fragile image, manipulation becomes unnecessary. Simple understanding becomes power. You can step out of the hall of mirrors while everyone else remains trapped inside, chasing their reflection. This awareness changes not only how you move through the world, but how you respond to it. The next time you feel invisible, you pause and remember. The reflection is not proof of worth. When someone brags, you hear the fear beneath the noise. When someone flatters you, you taste the bargain being offered. And when you feel the urge to perform, you see the child inside you reaching for attention. That sight alone begins to soften the need. You start to relate, not to compete. Empathy, born from self-knowledge, becomes a form of quiet strength, the only antidote to a world built on mirrors. No one chooses narcissism. It is not a sin that appears one day in adulthood. It is a survival mechanism that begins the moment a child realizes how fragile love can be. To understand why it rules so much of human life, you have to return to that first dim stage of awareness, before language, before reason, when the only proof of existence was another person's gaze. A newborn does not yet have a self. It feels hunger, warmth, fear, comfort. When the mother smiles, the child experiences itself as good. When the mother looks away, that goodness vanishes. Out of that oscillation, presence and absence, selfhood is formed. We learn that to be seen is to be safe, and to be unseen is to be in danger. That equation burrows deep into the nervous system and never truly leaves. Every adult version of narcissism is just that ancient reflex repeating, "Look at me so I can know I'm real." But childhood is never stable. Parents are distracted, impatient, imperfect. Moments of neglect or rejection teach the young mind that love must be earned. So the child invents strategies: perform well, be helpful, be charming, be invisible. Each strategy becomes a mask, and each mask hardens into character. We grow up, but the child beneath still believes the mask is necessary for survival. That is why criticism feels lethal. It threatens to expose the vulnerability underneath. Culture then reinforces the lesson. Every system of reward, school, work, even religion, depends on recognition. You are graded, reviewed, liked, promoted. We call it motivation, but it is also conditioning. Behave in ways that keep the mirror shining. Those who play the game well are praised as successful. Those who refuse are told to believe in themselves, as if self-worth could be manufactured by decree. The result is a society of people perpetually managing their image, terrified of slipping into invisibility. Technology perfects the cycle. The digital world gives us endless mirrors that reflect instantly and constantly. Each notification is a microdose of validation, each silence a withdrawal. We no longer wait for applause. It follows us everywhere, and the more mirrors we install, the less we see ourselves directly. The eye turns outward, scanning for approval until the inner landscape grows barren. Psychologically, narcissism persists because it rewards us in the short term. It feels good to be admired, to dominate, to to win arguments, to control perception. Those small victories release the same chemicals that once signaled safety in infancy. But the pleasure is fleeting. Admiration never satisfies because it cannot reach the place it is meant to heal. It feeds the image, not the being behind it. That is why the narcissist always needs more. More praise, more attention, more proof. The addiction is not to ego itself, but to the momentary relief ego provides from the terror of insignificance. The paradox is cruel. The more we seek to secure identity through mirrors, the less secure it becomes. The self inflated by constant reflection begins to collapse under its own weight. Without humility, we mistake visibility for substance, and once visibility fades, panic sets in. This is why even the powerful are restless. Fame does not quiet narcissism. It magnifies the hunger. Behind every grandiose display, there is often a frightened child still asking, "Do you see me now?" Understanding these roots does not excuse destructive behavior, but it explains why the disease is universal. Each person carries their own version, some loud, some quiet. For one, it becomes arrogance. For another, chronic self-doubt. For a third, the need to fix or rescue others. Different masks, same fear. Once you see this pattern, you stop treating narcissism as a personality flaw and start seeing it as a developmental wound, an open loop that keeps demanding closure through reflection. And you begin to see the path out. Because if narcissism was learned as protection, it can be unlearned through safety. Empathy, true empathy, begins when you feel safe enough not to perform. When you can sit unseen for a moment without panic. When you can hear another person's story without inserting yourself into it. When you can be wrong and not feel erased. Then the loop begins to close. What heals the wound is not more admiration, but the experience of existing without it. That is what we will explore next. The cost of living trapped in the mirror, and the mastery that begins when you finally learn to step beyond it. There is a quiet exhaustion that follows those who live for reflection. It rarely shows at first. On the surface, they appear driven, charming, confident. But beneath that sheen lies fatigue, the constant labor of maintaining the mask. Every encounter must be managed, every silence filled, every opinion calibrated to protect an image. The mind becomes a stagehand in its own play, endlessly adjusting lights and props, terrified that the audience might leave. The cost of this performance is depth. When everything exists to preserve the self-image, nothing truly reaches the self. Praise feels hollow because it is meant for the mask. Love feels conditional because it depends on the role you play. Soon, even pleasure becomes suspect. You find yourself watching your own happiness from a distance, asking, "Do I look happy enough?" That question rots every experience from the inside. Isolation grows quietly. At first, narcissism attracts its energy, its conviction, its brightness. But over time, people sense the transaction underneath. They feel unseen, used as mirrors, and eventually they retreat. The narcissist interprets their departure as betrayal and tightens the armor further, ensuring the next relationship will fail faster. Thus begins the spiral. Hunger creating distance, distance creating more hunger. Behind every grand ego, there is often a room of silence that no one is allowed to enter. On a larger scale, the cost is collective. A society addicted to attention becomes incapable of reflection. Politics turns into theater, conversation into performance, empathy into currency. We mistake visibility for virtue and applause for achievement. The result is a culture that looks vibrant but feels hollow. A glittering hall of mirrors where everyone talks and no one listens. When self-absorption becomes normal, empathy begins to sound naive, even weak. And yet the absence of empathy makes cooperation impossible. We lose the capacity to imagine anyone's experience but our own. The fabric that holds communities together frays until only spectacle remains. The personal and the social collapse into each other. The more narcissistic the culture becomes, the more insecure the individual feels, and the more the individual seeks validation from the culture that made them insecure. It is a perfect loop, efficient and endless, devouring meaning in exchange for attention. This is the true cost, not just loneliness, but the erosion of reality itself. When perception replaces being, nothing solid remains to stand on, but the same mechanism that enslaves can liberate, if you understand it. The way out of narcissism is not humiliation or self-loathing. It is awareness. You cannot kill the ego. You can only stop believing its stories. The work begins by noticing the moment you start performing. You catch yourself embellishing a story, defending an image, seeking approval. In that instant, you pause, you breathe, you ask, what am I protecting? Usually, it is not pride, but fear. Fear of being unseen, ordinary, forgettable. When you recognize that fear without obeying it, you create a tiny distance between impulse and action. That distance is freedom in seed form. Next comes empathy, not as moral virtue, but as practical discipline. Empathy means turning the mirror outward. It is the deliberate effort to imagine another interior world as vividly as your own. You start small, the waiter, the stranger, the rival, the friend. You watch their faces, their pauses, the subtext of their words. You ask, what are they protecting? What wound are they speaking from? This inquiry dissolves the illusion of opposition. Every person becomes a variation of the same human need, to be recognized, to feel safe, to matter. When you can see that clearly, anger softens, persuasion becomes easier, manipulation unnecessary. Empathy also disarms others. The moment you genuinely see someone, their performance falters, the mask slips, and real communication begins. This is why Greene calls empathy a form of power. It gives you access to what actually motivates people. You stop reacting to their words and start responding to their emotions. That ability turns conflict into strategy and relationships into art. But empathy cannot coexist with constant self-preoccupation. To cultivate it, you must practice emptiness, the willingness to step out of the spotlight. Spend a day listening without offering an opinion. Let others have their story without inserting your own. Notice the relief that follows. When you stop guarding the image, energy returns. The mind, once clenched around self-defense, begins to open. Creativity, patience, curiosity, qualities buried under vanity, rise naturally to the surface. This is the hidden reward of mastering narcissism, the rediscovery of genuine pleasure in other people. You find that understanding someone can feel as satisfying as being understood, that giving attention is more stabilizing than receiving it, and that solitude, once terrifying, becomes restorative because you no longer disappear when no one is watching. You remain whole, even in silence. From that ground, real self-love becomes possible. Not the brittle pride that demands admiration, but the quiet confidence that needs none. You respect yourself because you see yourself clearly, flawed, emotional, temporary, and still worthy. Paradoxically, this humility is what others experience as charisma. People are drawn to those who no longer compete for validation. Such presence feels safe, almost magnetic. It is the gravity of someone who has stepped out of the mirror and into reality. To live by this law is to trade glamour for depth, reflection for vision. You do not eliminate ego. You seat it properly, as servant, not master. You no longer need to be the brightest light in the room, because you understand that light is shared. From that awareness, empathy ceases to be a technique. It becomes a way of being. And the endless hunger that once drove you, see me, hear me, love me, fades into something quieter and stronger. I see you, I hear you, we exist. That is the transformation Robert Greene describes. Self-love evolving into empathy, the mirror turning into a window. It is not an easy passage, but it is the only one that leads out of the hall of mirrors and back into the world.